Picture the Monopoly man in your head right now, the little top hat fellow from the board game you played as a kid, and tell me, is he wearing a monocle? Most people say yes, they can see it clearly, a little round lens perched on his right eye, but here is the thing, he has never worn a monocle, not on a single box, not in a single version of the game, not once in over 90 years of Monopoly history, and yet millions of people around the world share this exact same memory of something that simply does not exist. Now, before you shrug that off as a harmless mistake, consider this, your brain, the organ you trust, to store every meaningful moment of your life, every childhood birthday, every first kiss, every conversation that shaped who you are. That brain is not recording anything, it never has been, and the implications of that are far more disturbing than a board game mascot with imaginary eyewear. We tend to think of memory like a camera. You experience something, your brain captures it, files it away, and when you need it later, you pull out the footage and press play. That model feels right. Because our memories feel so vivid, so detailed, so unmistakably ours, but neuroscience tells a completely different story. Every single time you remember something, your brain is not retrieving a stored file, it is reconstructing the event from scratch, stitching together scattered fragments of sensory data, emotion, context, and general knowledge, and assembling them into something that feels seamless. Think of it less like opening a photograph and more like asking a painter to recreate a scene from a description someone gave him last week. Sometimes the painting is close, sometimes it is not, and the painter never tells you when he is guessing. This is exactly what psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent her career proving. In the 1970s, she ran a deceptively simple experiment. She showed people a video of a car accident, and then asked them one question about how fast the cars were going, except she changed a single word for different groups. One group was asked how fast the cars were going when they hit each other. Another group got the word smashed. That one word, the difference between hit and smashed, changed what people remembered. The smashed group estimated higher speeds, and when asked a week later whether there had been broken glass at the scene, they confidently said yes. There was broken glass everywhere. There was no broken glass in the video. A single word rewrote what they saw with their own eyes. But Loftus was just getting started. She wanted to know if you could go further than editing memories, if you could plant entirely new ones that never happened at all. So she designed what became known as the Lost in the Mall experiment. She recruited volunteers and gave each one a small booklet containing 4 childhood stories that had supposedly been confirmed by a family member. 3 of the stories were real. 1 was completely fabricated, a detailed account of being lost in a shopping mall around age 5, crying, being found by an elderly woman, and eventually reuniting with the family. It never happened, none of it, and yet after reading the booklet and being interviewed twice, 25% of participants claimed they remembered it. Some added vivid details that were not even in the fake story. The color of the old woman's shirt, the smell of the food court, the feeling of the tiles under their shoes. They were not lying, they genuinely believed it had happened. Their brains had taken the suggestion, mixed it with real fragments of childhood, and built a memory indistinguishable from the real ones sitting next to it. Later studies pushed this even further. Researchers found they could implant false memories of being hospitalized overnight, of spilling punch all over someone at a wedding, even of meeting Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, which is impossible because Bugs Bunny is a Warner Brothers character and has never appeared at a Disney park. Around 30% of participants in that study remembered shaking his hand. Some remembered touching his ear. 1 person remembered him holding a carrot. Every single detail invented by their own mind felt absolutely real. Now, here is where this starts to get genuinely unsettling. Your brain does not just accept false memories from other people, it builds them on its own, constantly, without any outside suggestion at all. Researchers Henry Roediger and Kathleen McDermott proved this with an elegantly cruel experiment. They gave people a list of words to memorize: bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, nap. Then they tested them. Almost every single participant confidently remembered that the word sleep was on the list. It was not. Their brains saw the pattern, inferred the obvious connection, and manufactured a memory of a word that was never there, even when the researchers told participants beforehand exactly what the trick was, explained the whole design, warned them to watch out for it. People still fell for it. Their brains could not help it. The pattern was too strong. This happens because your brain does not store experiences word for word, pixel for pixel. It stores the gist, the general shape, the emotional flavor, and when you recall something, your brain fills in the gaps with what makes sense, what fits the pattern, what feels right. Neuroscientists have actually watched this process unfold inside the brain using fMRI scans. When people recall true memories, a region called the hippocampus lights up. When people recall false memories with complete confidence, the hippocampus lights up in almost exactly the same way. In 2013, a team at MIT went one step further and actually implanted a false memory directly into the brain of a mouse using optogenetics, activating specific neurons in the hippocampus to make the mouse remember receiving a foot shock in a chamber where it had never been shocked. The mouse froze in fear. When placed in that chamber afterward, its body reacted to something that never happened because, as far as its brain was concerned, it did happen. So your brain is constructing memories, editing them, and sometimes fabricating them from nothing. But it gets worse because you are not doing this alone. False memories are contagious. When one person in a group misremembers a detail, others who were present at the same event begin to adopt that error. Researchers call this the social contagion of memory. In experiments where two people witnessed the same event and then discussed it afterward, if one person introduced a false detail, the other person frequently absorbed it into their own memory and later reported it as something they personally saw. They did not feel influenced, they felt certain. This is the engine behind what the internet calls the Mandela Effect, the phenomenon where millions of people share the exact same false memory. It is named after Nelson Mandela because a surprising number of people remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. He did not. He was released, became president of South Africa, and died a free man in 2013. But people do not just vaguely think he died earlier. They remember specific news coverage. They remember seeing the funeral on television. They remember where they were when they heard the news. None of it happened, and it is not just Mandela. Millions remember the children's book series as the Berenstain Bears. It has always been Berenstain. Millions remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." He actually says, "No, I am your father." Millions remember the Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia behind the fruit. There has never been a cornucopia in that logo, not in any version, ever. The standard explanation is that our brains fill in details based on patterns and cultural associations. A top hat and cane go with a monocle. A basket of fruit goes with a cornucopia. Steen is a more common name ending than stain, and that explanation is probably right, probably. But here's the part that researchers still argue about. Why do these specific errors converge? Why do millions of people who have never spoken to each other independently generate the exact same wrong detail? The pattern matching theory explains why individuals make errors, but it does not fully explain why entire populations hallucinate the same ghost detail with such consistency. A 2022 study at the University of Chicago found that certain images are inherently more likely to trigger false memories than others. Friendlier faces cause more false recognition. Some visual compositions seem almost designed to be misremembered. There may be something in the structure of certain images and cultural icons that exploits a specific flaw in how the human visual memory system works, and we still do not fully understand what that something is. Now take all of this and apply it where it actually matters, the courtroom. According to the Innocence Project, eyewitness misidentification has contributed to roughly 69% of wrongful convictions later overturned by DNA evidence. These are not people who are lying. These are people who sat in a witness stand, looked at a defendant, and said with absolute conviction, "That is the person I saw." and they were wrong. Their memory had been contaminated by the phrasing of a detective's question, by a photograph shown to them days after the event, by the stress of the moment, by the simple passage of time that allowed the real memory to blur and a false one to sharpen. And it is not just witnesses. False memories can make innocent people confess to crimes they did not commit. Psychologists Saul Kasson demonstrated this with an experiment where participants were falsely accused of crashing a computer by pressing a wrong key. They had not done it. But when a Confederate in the room claimed to have seen them do it, a significant number signed a written confession. Some of them went beyond compliance. They actually developed memories of the moment they pressed the key. They remembered reaching for it. They remembered the sound the computer made. They remembered the feeling of panic, all of it fabricated by their own mind under social pressure. So where does this leave you? Every memory you have, your first day of school, your wedding, the last conversation you had with someone you lost, every single one of those has been reconstructed, edited, and partially invented by a brain that prioritizes coherence over accuracy. That does not mean your memories are worthless. Most of them are close enough to reality to be useful, and the emotional core of a memory, how it made you feel, tends to be more reliable than the specific details. But it does mean that the version of your past that you carry around in your head is not a documentary. It is more like a story your brain keeps rewriting every time you read it, and each time it rewrites, it drifts a little further from whatever actually happened, and you never notice because the new version always feels just as real as the last one. The most unsettling thing about false memories is not that they exist. It is that you have no reliable way to tell them apart from the real ones. Right now, somewhere in your past, there is a memory you would bet your life on. Something you can see clearly, something you can feel, something you are certain happened exactly the way you remember it, and there is a very real chance that it did not.